Okay, we're going to talk about chapters 4, 5, and I'm also going to briefly talk about the variant book, Economics of Information Technology. All right, so we will try to go through this quickly, keep everybody falling asleep. So first of all, let's talk about the value of information. So knowledge is power. That's from Francis Bacon. But information or knowledge has economic value, and this reduces uncertainty and drives us towards the correct actions. Now, when we think about valuing information, we start looking at game theory, and so nature is any non-strategic player in a game. And then the strategic players, they examine the utility of the information. So non-strategic players have no objectives, no preferences, etc. Okay. With game theory, the non-strategic influence is nature, and nature is all forces and uncertainties that don't originate from conscious strategic behavior. Okay, this is part predictable, part random. It's always blind, impartial, and has no intentions. Okay. Now, the source of information value, no market for good or bad news. There's just a market for news. And the source of news is what we sell. So news has no value until it's distributed. Okay. Value information, again, is the value of the information source, not the value of the actual news. The main value of information is the action that we can take reacting to the info. If it increases utility, then it's much more valuable. Okay? An example would be a weather reporting service. So it's very valuable if it reduces our probability of getting wet when we walk outside. The value of information is also a guide to action. It increases utility expected from receiving information and optimally reacting to it. Okay. Then, the valuation principle, the value of info is increasing in utility when we receive the information and optimally react to it. It's equal to the expected utility with the info minus the expected utility without the info. And it depends on the stakes, the probabilities of outcomes, and optimal actions. Next, we move on to the optimal amount of info. So we have a choice, no info or info. But we usually have a choice of quality of info as well. So higher quality info is going to be more valuable. So, for example, if I'm able to get information that's very specific about maybe the economic forecasts. Okay, there's actually a movie. What is that movie called? I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's got Richard Pryor in it, I believe. Maybe it's Eddie Murphy. I don't remember. But anyways, there's a movie. And he swaps places with these. Sorry, I was thinking of the wrong movie. The movie I'm thinking of is, I think it's Eddie Murphy. And he's poor at the beginning of the movie. And these two rich guys decide to play a game and have a contest. And so they pull him in off the street. They let him live in a mansion, give him money and stuff. And they basically expect he's just going to piss away the money, basically. But in reality, he ends up screwing them up by giving them bad information. And then they put all their money into it and they end up in the poorhouse themselves. Can't remember the name of the movie, though. Anyways, higher quality information is going to have more value. All right. Now deciding, so let's think about internet searches. So when we go to Google and we search for something, that first page of search results is generally the highest quality, the most relevant to what we're searching for. The value of that information on those results diminishes each time we click to the next page. And the level of that diminishing return may be, say, 50%. So first page is worth 100%. Click to the second page, the value of that second page of links is 50% of the original. You do it again, now it's 50% of the 50%. You do it again, it's now 50% of the 50% of the 50%, and so on and so forth. Okay? So you have to balance the marginal benefit against the marginal cost of spending more time on the search. Now I want to talk about the variant book real quick and just talk about a couple things that were mentioned in the book and just hit home on a couple of things here. So number one, the IT investments in the 1990s, the telecom deregulation, and also the expansion of telecom around the world to increase the speed. Huge investment made. Y2K hit at that same time, and then there was the dot-com boom. So these three factors and investments really increased the rapidness of which we've been able to develop information systems. Okay? IT is used to manipulate info. Sometimes information is intellectual property, and that use of intellectual property affects economics. And I'll talk a bit about IP and economics in a few minutes here. So price discrimination, so we can have first degree, which is highly personalized products at a personalized price. We can have second degree, where we have product line pricing. And we can have third degree, which is differentiating the price to different groups. So perhaps we have one price for small businesses, another price for enterprises, and another price for someone else. Okay? Bundling can flatten our demand curve and can lead to us achieving higher revenue than we could have achieved by selling individual products. Okay? And so a couple of examples of that. The book mentions Office software. That's a great example. You know, if I don't need a database, I'm never going to buy Access. So how does Microsoft ensure that it sells Access? Well, it bundles it in an Office suite and offers it as a pricing that's competitive, and then people buy it. And maybe some of those people will use that product. And so that's how it was able to get new products like PowerPoint, when PowerPoint came out, to be adopted. It certainly wasn't from selling PowerPoint by itself, it just bundled with Word and Excel. Switching cost and lock-in. So this is a topic I want to spend a little bit of time on and talk about a couple of examples. Number one is ERP, which actually happens to be an example from the book. So the switching cost for an ERP system, significantly higher than many other systems. Once an organization spends that level, and we're talking probably millions of dollars, on building out an ERP system for the organization, the switching cost to take that system and convert all of that information, which is now being used for business decisions, and over time, the more information you collect in an ERP system, the better the data is, which means the higher quality that information ends up being for you, and therefore the value of that information increases over time. So let's say we've had an ERP system for 10 years and we've accumulated 10 years worth of data on that system. For us to switch to a completely different system now, the switching costs are going to be enormous. And that's not to say it doesn't happen. There are companies who will do this, and I've seen it as well. But the switching cost is enormous. And so that's one area of switching cost where it can be a problem. The other thing is cloud. And this is more of a modern day example. So cloud, let's say I go off and I decide that I'm going to start deploying my computer technology stuff to Amazon Web Services. And I go down that path and I spend a lot of time converting over to Amazon. And then a year down the road, Amazon, and I finished my migration, a year down the road, Amazon decides to reduce my rates by 50%. Now it's costing my business another 50%. And so now I'm thinking maybe I should either switch or have multiple hedges against those price increases. So now I want to go and put my applications and my data out in Azure as well for Microsoft. Well, the problem with that is I've already spent a lot of money on that migration. I've invested in a particular vendor's tool, and now in order for me to pull that out and move it to another vendor or have it in multiple places, I have to rethink my entire strategy. So the switching costs there are significantly high. I'm also going to lose out on the aspects of maybe the data that I've already collected, because maybe I'm not going to be able to take that information from one place and easily migrate it to another. So that's another high switching cost example. Computer mediated transactions. So this is fairly common, and I'll give you a couple of examples. First of all, Blockbuster doesn't exist anymore, but Blockbuster initially would buy videos at a significantly higher price than you and I would have to pay if we were to go buy a video from a studio. Right? Say we go to Walmart and we buy the video and it's $10, maybe Blockbuster's paying $60 or $100 or $200 for the same video, with the reasoning being that they're going to make money every time it's rented out. So maybe they're charging $4 per rental, and it's a $60 video. Then after 15 times of renting it out, now it's pure profit for Blockbuster. Okay? So back in the 90s, roughly, Blockbuster's point of sale systems were able to collect information about the rentals that were happening and feed that information up to the studios. So the model changed, and instead of paying up front $60 for the video, Blockbuster might pay $8 for the video. Right? But 30% of the revenue from rentals on an ongoing basis would then go to the studios. Right? So that information that Blockbuster collects on their customers and popularity of videos now becomes extremely valuable. A, the revenue from it is going directly to the studios, but B, that information can then be used by studios and Blockbuster both. So Blockbuster can only use it to determine which videos they want to present in their stores, and they maybe want to focus on the ones that are most popular, and that can vary by store. But the other thing is, now the studios know what people prefer. So now they can make videos that are aligned with what people are watching. So now pause that for a second and think about that, because that's what we're seeing with Netflix and all these other providers now. But they're collecting the data in real time, they're running analytics on it, and they're giving recommendations in real time for the next thing that you watch. So now this data on viewer preferences is becoming even more valuable as we progress. So because it's more, it's higher quality data that we're getting from people. Okay? Now I want to mention one more thing, is telematics in trucks. So that was another example the book gave. There was just a company called Smart Drive Systems down in San Diego that was acquired by another company. I can't remember the name of the company now, but they were acquired for their ability to provide data collection systems in vehicles, particularly semi-trucks, to help them to lower their insurance premiums and improve their drivers' productivity and also the safety. And so the idea is, truck drivers driving, there's computer systems that are collecting a ton of data. They're collecting brake usage, acceleration, vehicle speed, fuel economy. They're also collecting video data, which is being used to analyze whether truck drivers are making unsafe moves. All of this data is something that businesses pay for. It has value. Previously, it had no value because you couldn't collect the data feasibly. Now you can collect the data, and so now the data is actually getting value attached to it, and it's driving value on the back end for these organizations as well. Now, lastly, I want to talk about another part of the Varian book that you should have hopefully read, and if not, you do need to read it. Intellectual property. Okay, so companies like Coke, KFC, Microsoft, they use a variety of techniques to protect their intellectual property, because intellectual property is information that has value. And so in the case of some information, it has value by being secret. So let's talk about the first area, trade secrets. Okay? The value is in that remaining a secret. So KFC sells chicken, and sells a lot of chicken, because their recipe is considered a trade secret and highly protected. So it has a very high value. If KFC's secret recipe suddenly came out, the value of that information would significantly decrease, because now everybody can make KFC chicken. Okay? Now, this second example is Coca-Cola. Same basic principle, food item. Okay? The formula for Coke is locked up. There are plenty of companies that try to duplicate Coke's formula. But if you've ever noticed, if you ever drank the store brand of soda, it doesn't taste the same as Coke. For that matter, it doesn't taste the same as Pepsi because they've maintained the trade secret of their formula. Okay? There's value in that formula. And so there's value in that information. The third example I have is Microsoft and software companies in general. Software companies, one form of protection that they use for their property is trade secrets. So there are things Microsoft keeps trade secret, doesn't disclose, you sign a non-disclosure agreement, you can't share them, okay? And so by not sharing them, you maintain the value of that information. Now the second way that companies can maintain the value of information is through the copyright process. So software can fit into this area of copyrights, books, music, movies, that sort of thing. Another area is patent law. Okay? And so patents protect information as well, but they do it differently. Think of it like the opposite of a trade secret. So you don't want trade secrets to get out. But with a patent, you have to disclose your secret. Okay? So it's the complete opposite of a trade secret. But by disclosing your secret publicly, you have the exclusive rights to that secret and the information in that secret that you put to patent for a period of time, usually 20 years, okay? Which means you have the exclusive right. Now, if someone else wants to go use your information, they can, but they have to get your permission and pay for it. Okay? Or get your permission and they don't have to pay for it if you don't want to pay for it, but that would be silly, okay, if someone's wanting to use your secret. So patents allow you to have an exclusive license, and if someone goes and violates the patent and copies it and sells something that's, you know, the same information or whatever, using the same patent that you have, then you can go after them, okay, for breach of patent law. So that's what organizations do. They have high value information, and so they take one of these approaches. They either do it as a trade secret and hope it never gets out. They do it as a copyright. And so an example of things with a copyright would be music and movies. Okay? So that brings me to my next point of value of information. If you have something that's protected and it's exposed or given away for free, the value of that information is diminished. So a company could have a claim against any one of you for causing the value of their product, their information, to diminish by giving it away to someone else. And a common example of this is books, music, and movies. Okay? Books are copyrighted. That means we can't share those with you, the textbooks. We'd love to, but it can't. Okay? The situation with this class is 2 of the books the library was able to get their hands on and pay for. So the library actually paid for those books. That's why they were made available on e-reserve. That is something the library did legally. But if we go and share a copy of the book with our classmates, that's actually diminishing the economic value of that information, and companies don't take kindly to that, especially Harvard Business Publishing. They do not like that sort of thing. So with Harvard Business Publishing, for example, you can't even copy a single article out of it and share it. Okay? Now, there's the fair use provision, which has some very strict requirements. The fair use allows educators to make a copy of a reasonable amount of material. Okay, and so generally that depends, but the general rule that we tend to follow in academia is we can make a copy of, say, 2 chapters. Okay, and so we do that at the beginning of the quarter for those of you who weren't able to get the book yet. But after those 2 chapters, you're not going to be able to get a copy of the book, okay, or the material. So that's why on the book side, because that information has value, we obviously can't share it. Now, on the music and movie side, I would guess that many of you go and share with your friends music and movies. Okay? It's one thing to share a YouTube link that's out there, that's fine, right? The problem is when you upload something that is protected by copyright to YouTube. First of all, YouTube will probably pull it down. But if they miss it, that's a violation. And then if you watch the video, you could be potentially liable as well. Where this becomes a bigger problem is around movies, like Hollywood movies, TV shows, music. Okay, but these days with music being streamed, this is probably less of an issue than it used to be. When you bought individual songs, this was more of a problem. Okay? And so there have been many lawsuits, and there have been many individuals receiving letters from lawyers demanding payment for that music because it's stealing. That information has value as long as that value is protected. The minute we start giving it away, then the information has no value anymore. Lastly, on the movie front, so movies, putting them on the internet, that's one example of piracy and violation of the intellectual property rules. But taking a DVD and breaking the copy protection, also known as digital rights management, that's defeating a technological mechanism to protect the content from being copied. That's already been ruled by court cases going back to, I think, the either early 2000s or late 90s, I forget when. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act prohibits that sort of thing. You ever seen the FBI warning at the top of videos when you're watching TV or something? They don't mess around. So is it really worth sharing that information that you paid $10 for just to save your friend $10 and then later get served with a criminal charge where you go to jail, which is possible, or having to pay a huge fine? Okay. Guarantee you, if you tell your friend, hey, remember that video I let you borrow or that I gave to you? Yeah, I paid $10 for it. Well, yeah, they're going to charge me $1,000. Okay? And so I need $1,000, or I need $10,000, or $1 million. Your friend's going to be like, screw you. Okay? So just think about that. Okay? Same thing with software, by the way. So software is the same thing. It's protected. And so you download a piece of software, you can't make a copy for your friend. Okay? If you buy Office, your friend needs to buy Office. Okay? All right, so that's it for this material. Okay? And just make sure you are keeping up on the homework assignments. Okay? And then also make sure, I think that the date's already passed for the first discussion. So just make sure you're keeping up on the discussions. There's no excuse. If you procrastinate and you have problems the weekend that this is due, that's not my problem. That's your problem. You should have planned better. Okay, you have plenty of time to do these assignments, so make sure that you're taking advantage of it and not waiting till the last minute. Okay? I don't actually have any sympathy if you waited until this past weekend to do your discussion. Okay? You've had plenty of time to do it. All right. So the discussion, no excuse. The homework and the case study, you do have a little bit of leeway on those, but I wouldn't rely on it. Okay, try to turn things in on time. All right, thanks.